Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for the last webinar of this series, part of our updated Digital Forensics short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward and I'll be your MC, tearfully bidding Matt Constable goodbye after this webinar. Wherever you are watching this, we all hope you're safe and well comfortable and ready for another thrilling instalment. Before we begin, just some final housekeeping for the course. We quite clearly use Zoom still for our webinars and encourage questions and the use of chat during the course. During the webinar, I should say. We ask that you direct all questions relevant to course content to the Q&A section. And you send all administration type questions, dates, times, resource availability, that sort of stuff to Hannah in the chat. You can chat amongst yourselves by chatting to all panelists and attendees, and you can make that change by toggling through the drop-down box once you've opened the chat log. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but if a question is particularly relevant, I'll interrupt Matt. Hannah, of course, is around in the usual administrative and support role. She's responsible for the learn.itmasters.edu.au website, which has actually had a few gremlins floating around the place. So sorry if you've been trying to get in. You should be able to log in now if you haven't tried again. Anyway, that's where you'll find all the other materials needed for this course. Links to readings and tasks and discussion forums and quizzes. And of course, the short course exam, which we'll talk about at great length at the end of the webinar. I'm very excited to talk about it and to see how you all go, because it's going to be a bit of fun. It's time to welcome Matt. Hello, Matt. I hope you are well. Talk now.
Hello, Guy, and Hannah, and everyone who's online. So welcome to the last week of our digital forensics course. So time flies when you're having fun. I'm actually just scrolling through the chat box, and it's amazing to see some of the company we have, people from the Philippines, plenty from Australia, a couple from Uganda, from Ireland, Ghana, Nigeria, all over the place.
I do love these short courses.
Yeah, it's so fantastic. Edinburgh, Scotland, hello there. Yeah, wonderful. Atlanta, someone from Atlanta. Excellent. So yeah, it's just great to see so many tuning in, particularly across the different time zones. I mean, some of you must be keeping ungodly hours, but I appreciate you being here. So I hope you're enjoying the course and getting something out of it.
And apologies for our broad, unintelligible dialects.
Yes, indeed, that can be an issue at times. Of course, we don't think we have accents, but we probably sound completely ridiculous to a lot of you people out there. So we don't tend to speak the Queen's English. It's really a mongrel version of English, particularly for people like Guy and I. So anyway, we digress slightly. So this week, our last module in this particular course, we're going to be looking at some of the things we talk about in ITC 597 around specific digital forensic tools. So we look at our building a digital workstation, we look at some hardware and software tools, and then at the end, I'm sort of going to do a bit of an off-the-cuff demo of a particular piece of software that is used in this particular subject. So again, there, as we've discussed in the previous weeks, there are many various types of tools that you can use, and if we wanted to go through all of them, then it would, there's literally a year, probably a degree level university course just in doing that. So we'll look at one particular tool tonight, but look at the different options that it's got. So it's more of a case management tool. It is a commercial thing, but we've only got a freeware version of it. So there are some things that we won't necessarily be able to dig into much, but it'll give you an idea of what the general gist of what the case management tools look like and the sorts of things that they can handle. So without any further waffling on, let's commence the actual tutorial itself. And once again, thanks to Dr. Arif Khan for some of the content of these files, these slideshows. As I said, we're basing it pretty heavily on that particular digital forensics subject, although we do have another digital forensics subject which looks more at the policy, procedure, and the chain of custody and the legalities of digital forensics. So tonight we're going to look at how you evaluate your DFT needs. So DFT is just digital forensic tools. So we're going to keep that shorthand. We're going to look at some of the functions of the DFTs, the DFT types, mainly software and hardware, and we'll look at some forensic workstations. We'll talk about briefly the purpose of validation and why you do it, and then we'll have a bit of a look at the OS forensic tool. So a quote, first of all, I'm not going to read all of that out. It's a bit dry, but what it's basically saying is that critical to forensic investigation is the process of acquisition and how we maintain the integrity of the evidence in which we find during that investigation. It's basically paraphrasing, it's crucial for the first and subsequent responders. So that is the digital evidence first responder and the digital evidence specialist to maintain a chain of custody, ensuring that it's gathered, protected through a variety of structured processes that are acceptable to courts. So if we don't do that, then we have no way of introducing that evidence to court in a way that's going to be permissible or going to be reliable. This, of course, specifically applies to public investigations. So remember we talked about it, I think in the first week, we talked about private and public investigations. So public investigations being those basically run by some sort of law, or either run by or on behalf of some law enforcement agency and related to a specific crime that is affected by some sort of legislation. A private investigation, of course, is those investigations we do in-house to determine whether someone has gone against policy or procedure within your actual own organisation, and therefore the crucial nature of the evidence is less of a worry. So the value of the evidence, the integrity of the evidence is less of a worry than it is in a legal setting. So in order to evaluate what tools we need in order to perform our jobs, and it's not actually mentioned on this slide, but I want to say it off the top, is that first of all, we need to consider what types of investigations we're going to perform. Are we public or private? Are we looking at crimes that are specifically digital? So that is, they are not just facilitated by digital resources or digital tools, but actually are, everything's contained within that digital environment. So fishing or farming, as we talked about over the course of the subject, the short course, I'll get it out in a minute. Are we talking about digital crime or committing regular crimes, if you like? So things like murder or kidnapping or blackmail through the use of digital resources. And so we've got to consider what it is we're actually going to be investigating. And then after that, we need to consider our own level of expertise. So how much experience and how much knowledge do we have in certain areas before we start picking our tools? So for example, you're a Windows person and you have never used Linux or an Apple or any other operating system in your life. You only ever used Windows. Then obviously that is going to dictate the sort of tools that you're going to investigate with, and the sort of tools that you're going to either purchase or use open source. So we need to consider a number of things before we decide which tools we're actually going to look at. Once we've decided though what we're investigating and what our own limitations are on our own experience and skills, then we can determine, all right, what sort of forensic tools fit the needs that I have. So first thing we need to consider are the open source tools, because they're the best value. Open source tools, we don't pay for them. So there are some some disadvantages with open source tools, which we'll look at. One of them may be that they may not potentially be as feature rich in a single package as what you may like. You might have to source multiple tools to come up with the same end lot of evidence that you would if you went and bought a forensic case analysis tool, for example. But obviously the value for money is a big sticking point. And if you have the relative skills and knowledge to be able to use multiple tools and then bring that evidence together in a single coherent story and build a narrative that shows what's happened in the case, then you haven't got too much of a problem. Of course, open source tools are not always available to provide the functions, the functionality, or the features that you want. And in that case, you need to consider those commercial tools that are available, such as Ncase or the full-on version of FTK, just as a couple of examples. But be aware they can be quite costly. The other thing is they're difficult to get evaluation. Well, in terms of Ncase, you can't really get a digital evaluation version of it anymore. So it's very difficult. You have to go through the whole sales pitch and process and pay money to actually get an evaluation in the first place. So unless you've obviously got a backdoor through some support contract, which as an individual forensic investigator, you're probably not going to have. So you need to be aware of the cost of the commercial tools. Most of the time, a single commercial package will have all the features and bits and pieces in it that you could possibly want, but it might not be for you. Some questions to ask when you are evaluating your tools, and it's really important to have this background knowledge before you start asking these questions. So first, which operating system does this forensic tool run on? So obviously you need to base that on what operating system is your preference. What operating system are you experienced with? So is it going to be a Windows thing? Is it going to be a Linux? Can you handle both? Do you care which operating system it's on? You might care. You might not. You might care. Is the tool versatile? So what does that mean? So that means can it do multiple things or do the same thing in multiple different ways? So how many different ways, how many different formats, for example, can it create an image file in? Can it do a raw image? Can it do one that can be opened in a forensic toolkit if you needed that? Okay, so how many different ways can it perform the same task or get to the same endpoint? Again, that may or may not be important to you. If you're considering open source tools and you're happy to work with a variety of tools, it may not matter because you might be able to get another tool that does the same thing in a different way. So whether it's a single tool is versatile or not may be a moot point. Can you analyze more than one file system? Okay, that is important. You might not always be investigating systems that have an NTFS file system, for example. You might come across a FAT file system. You might come across a HPFS, a high performance file system. You might come across a network file system. So you can't always assume that you're going to come across the same file system structure everywhere you go. So it's important that a tool can look at more than one different type of file system. Does it have the ability to implement scripting to automate repetitive functions and tasks? So if, for example, you are searching through a hard drive looking for specific file types, can you actually indicate to the tool, well, I want to look at file types of this size or this extension or that have been modified after this date or have the archive bit set, etc., etc. Okay, so give you flexibility in what you can look for. The important part about that is that it allows you, it facilitates that sparse gathering of information. So if you know, or you don't, there's no need for you to look at an entire, say, 4 terabyte drive. You can, but you know that you're only looking for specific file types or files with specific attributes or modified after a certain date, then you need the tool to be able to facilitate that. Otherwise, you need to scrub through everything to find out what's going on. Does it have automated features? So are there parts of it that you can click and shoot, basically, point and shoot, basically? So click on something, say perform this operation, then you can walk away while it does it. what is the vendor's reputation for providing product support? Now, if it's open source, that's something you do need to consider. Open source, you'll have larger avenues for support if you like, but you will have to determine manually whether each of the avenues that you've got to find support for a particular tool or knowledge about using a particular tool, you'll have to decide which ones are valid and useful and which ones are maybe not so useful, because in open source there's a huge variety of support options in terms of the number of people that will provide you with support. Some of them are your friends, so to speak, and will provide you with good information. Others will provide you with rubbish information, not necessarily because they trying to be a pain in the backside, but because they may not actually know themselves. Whereas if you use commercial digital forensic tools, then one of the things you need to look at is the reputation of the vendor, and are they any good with providing the support, keeping the tool up to date, is their service and support agreements good value for money. And then apart from those questions that we've just asked, we need to determine whether our digital forensic tool of choice, the ones we're investigating, are flexible. So can they run on multiple versions of Windows, for example, or multiple platforms? Can I get versions that run on both Windows and non-Windows? Are they able to read a variety of file types and file systems? Okay, so they need to have that as a minimum, those sorts of flexibility built into them. Are they reliable? So reliable means if you were to do the same operation 100 times, you would get the same results 100 times. So you don't want a tool where you run an operation 100 times and get 100 different results. No reliability, absolutely useless as a digital forensic tool. And then lastly, the future expandability. Now, with some open source tools, it's good. With commercial tools, expandability or upgradability, if you like, is generally pretty good because these companies want to keep making money, so they keep introducing features that their users want. They keep improving things as they go on. Open source, that often happens, but there will be a time where an open source product will potentially reach its end of life and it won't be updated anymore. And you've got to be careful that you don't tie yourself in too tightly to one particular open source tool, because if you do and it becomes that end of life product that people lose interest in developing, you may find that, okay, you now have to go and find another tool and go through all these questions again. And is it going to be backward compatible with the old archived case files that you've got? Can you open them? What are your options moving forward? So you need to be a little bit more careful with the open source stuff, but there still is the option, obviously, for expandability in most cases, particularly if it's a popularly highly used tool. The other thing you might also consider is that sometimes a really good open source tool will be taken over by a commercial company. So they'll be bought out and they'll be turned into a commercial product. Okay, that's plenty of examples. FTK is a perfect example of that started as open source. Well, it was a number of different tools open source that then were put together into a commercial package. Fortunately, there are some parts of it you can still get open source, which is useful, but if you want the full thing, it's a commercial package. The other thing you want to consider is, and this sort of harks back to what I was saying with the open source tool potentially reaching its end of life, you still want to keep hold of old code or old packages if you've got them, because you never know when you may need them in a future date. You may need to go back to some archived evidence or some archived images, either to inform yourself on a new case or to simply revisit a case that may have been closed for a while and now some new evidence or something else has happened that needs to be reopened. So you create a software library which contains all the versions of the forensic utilities and operating systems and other programs that you've used up until this point in time. Because you never know, as I said, when you may need legacy tools. You may even take over a case from someone and they may have evidence or files that have been built in a legacy tool. And if you don't have access to that tool, then it's going to be very difficult to continue on with an investigation or shed any light on what's going on. In terms of testing and standards, there's a couple of good resources here that are worth looking at, and what they basically give you is some evidence or some knowledge on the relative usefulness or integrity of the tool that you might be investigating. So particularly this one, I've put a link up to this one here. There's this particular bit here, actually, I'll just highlight it. The Computer Forensics Tool Catalogue. So I've actually put the link up for that Moodle already. It's worthwhile having a look at that, because what it allows you to do is to browse the NIST catalog that they've built up with the forensic tools and see what each one of them does, compare one tool to another, open source, commercial, and get an idea of what the tool's all about from a relatively autonomous organization that doesn't have any particular stake in any of the tools. And so it gives you that, that honest, if you like, as honest as it's ever going to be, honest opinion on what a particular tool is like and the features it's got and how you may be able to implement it in your own digital forensic investigation. And again, then this one here, which I haven't actually put up on Moodle, but you can certainly do a Google search quickly enough for it, just on the standards number there, is basically a set of guidelines for the ID collection, acquisition, and preservation of digital evidence. So it's more around the process side of it, which is why I haven't put the link up. This is more of a sort of a tools and technical type discussion we're having in this online course, rather than the guides and processes and procedures. So what can our digital forensic tools do, or what must they do? So there are 5 major things that they absolutely must be able to perform in order to be considered useful. So they must be able to acquire files or images or evidence in whatever form that you're looking for. So what that means is not just being able to find it, but being able to make a copy of it that maintains the integrity of those files or images or evidence. We don't want to change anything in that acquisition process. There are a number of tools. There are the hardware and software tools, the write blockers, which we've talked about, which can help facilitate that. But at the end of the day, the acquisition of that through the tool it's obviously really important how that tool performs that. Must also be able to validate and verify. So there we're talking about those digital hashes and making sure that what we have copied and ended up with is exactly the same as the original. So validating and verifying that the processes or the operations that we're going through are working as we expect, and that we're getting the correct result or the most accurate reflection of the truth. Really, that's what we're really looking at as the end result. Extraction is really the ability to pull information from the data set that you have. So pull information and collate information from the evidence that you've got. So you might have an image file, which is great in and of itself, but you need to be able to extract and then leading on from that, reconstruct potentially information from that evidence to build a narrative of what's actually happened in the incident or crime that you're investigating. So we need to extract information from the image or the evidence, and occasionally we need to reconstruct. So that is, if you think, and we're going to do some of this a bit later on, I'll have a look at how it's done or some examples of it. We've got some files that have been deleted, and then they've been partially, those clusters that those files are on have been partially overwritten. How do we extract and reconstruct that information from that particular location so that it's useful? Okay, tools need to be, your DF tools need to be able to do that. And they also need to be able to report. So report to you something of value. based on the evidence that we've got at hand. So do some collation, if you like, of the different functions that the suite or the tool may have, and put it into a format that is digestible and easy to look at. Now, of course, it's reporting. These particular functions are probably more related to those commercial tools, aren't they? Because there may be individual, well, there are individual open source tools that allow you to do each one of these individually. And particularly the reporting, that's in an open source sense, more often than not, that will be up to you as the individual rather than the job of the tools that you're actually using. So really, as a whole, if we consider all of these points together, these major tasks together, they really refer to a commercial tool, or if you like, they apply more to a tool kit rather than an individual tool. So a group of tools that you put together must be able to do these 5 different tasks all together. So it doesn't matter if they can't do them individually, but as long as you can bring it all together into a coherent story by the end of it, then that's okay. So it's either applies to a toolkit or a forensic suite. We can also obviously have, or maybe not obviously, but command line tools or GUI applications. So command line tools are going to mainly be the domain of Linux, those Linux tools, although there are still command line tools in a Windows environment. And the GUI applications are mainly going to be in a Windows environment, although there are some GUI tools in the Linux environment as well. So for example, if we were to use something like Kali Linux, there are some of the tools in that are graphical, but the majority of them will be command line. In the Windows environment, it's generally the opposite. The first tools that analyze and extract the data from floppy disks, which you're not going to see much of now, on hard disks were MS-DOS tools, so basically command line tools on IBM PCs. But this was, predated Windows, or Windows as we know it now. So maybe Windows 3.1 or Windows 3.1 workgroups, which of course was just a Windows graphical shell that was built on top of a DOS-based system. And things like Norton Disk Edit was one of the first DOS tools used for computer investigations a long time back. The good thing about command line tools is that they require very little in terms of system resources, and you can have lots of them open at once, which can also then lead to confusion in the background, potentially. But fewer system resources, and they're designed to run in minimal configuration. So you don't need particularly high-powered resources to actually run these DOS-based or command line utilities. GUI forensic tools can help you to simplify your investigations, because we know that the GUI interface is a lot more intuitive. It's potentially a lot easier to navigate, and it allows a complexity to be built in through the menu system that is easily driven, as opposed to a command line interface where lots of options can be confusing and cumbersome. It also greatly simplifies the training that you need to give to beginner investigators as well. Windows tools are, generally speaking, more intuitive and therefore a little easier to get up to speed with than command line tools. And most GUI forensic tools are put together as suites. So things like OS Forensics, which we'll have a look at shortly, NCase, FTK, those sorts of platforms are a suite of tools combined together with a Windows interface. Now, what happens underneath is obviously still, driven by windowified versions of command line utilities. But what you see is a nice, pretty interface that's really easy to drive and really easy to use. Some of the advantages of the GUI forensic tools are ease of use, obviously, multitasking. Okay, Windows being a multitasking environment, one may argue, Unix people may argue that it's, that's arguable, that it's not necessarily multitasking, or it does multitasking of a form. So you can have multiple Windows tools open at the same time, and they can all be working in a multitasking sort of way. The other advantage is there's no need for learning older operating systems because we can drive it all through that Windows interface. So we don't have to worry about learning how to use Linux tools or learning how to use older versions of Windows which may not longer be supported. That doesn't mean we can't investigate those types of devices, but we don't have to use tools based on those older operating systems to investigate. Some disadvantages, you may argue that they use excessive resource requirements, so lots of CPU, lots of memory in particular. So you need a beefier version of a workstation, so something with a lot more power in terms of memory and processing capability in order to run these types of tools. Produce inconsistent results. Okay, so that has been a criticism. If you're using the same tool constantly, that's not in my experience generally the case, but sometimes there can be inconsistencies between different tool sets that purport to be doing exactly the same type of operation. And so getting that inconsistency between a couple of tools can throw off your validation and verification processes, which we talk about shortly. Using Windows tools will create tool dependencies. So there will be files and applications that each of the suites will depend on in order to run, where you don't necessarily have that environment in the command line environment. Investigators may want to use only one tool because that's where their expertise lies. But we know that for validation and for verification, it's useful to use multiple tools to make sure that you can get the same result using multiple tools. And I wouldn't say this is a disadvantage of using GUI forensic tools, but it's incumbent, so I'm not sure why that point's there in that context, but it's incumbent on us to be familiar with more than one type of tool, because there may be times when a particular tool or suite that we're using, regardless of how sophisticated it is not going to do the entire job. So we may need to use other tools, whether they're GUI or command line based, doesn't matter, but we may need to use other tools at another time to bring more clarity to the investigation that we're doing. So it's always useful to have more than one egg in your basket, so to speak.
Would that dot have been intended as a Maybreed complacency sort of?
Well, it could be. That's actually one of the points that we've grabbed out of the subject slide. So it could be a complacency thing, absolutely.
But of course, none of our attendees would ever be complacent.
Oh, not at all. Not at all, I'm sure. All right, so hardware tools. So that's command line, GUI, hardware tools are also available as well. And these range from really simple single purpose components to complete forensic workstation systems that you may build yourself or you may buy commercially. Important thing about these is that we know that technology, hardware changes really, really quickly. So remember Moore's law, used to be the old Moore's law, which I'm not sure holds together anymore. I think it's more accelerated, but more accelerated, even further accelerated than what it was when Moore brought this law out. So Moore was an engineer that used to work for Intel, the processor company, for those of you who don't know. And he basically came up with this law, which wasn't really a law, but it was a guideline which said that every 18 months, processing capability of CPUs and capacity of systems would double every 18 months. Now, I think that's probably a bit behind the times now. I think it probably happens quicker than that now. But the point is, we know that technology updates really, really rapidly. So keeping your forensic tool hardware up to scratch so that it can keep pace with everything you may possibly encounter is really, really important. So it's important to, not only from the software point of view, software, we're always looking for updates and patches and upgrades. Okay, we know that that's something that we all get used to doing. We need to do that in a forensic sense with our hardware as well. Okay, so it's not something we can buy and expect it to last 5 years. We need to be keeping our finger on the pulse and understanding that we need to update this stuff really, really really quickly. And of course, it'll eventually fail. Everything has a end of life. Everything has a mean time between failures. So that is the average time it takes, or the average number of times you can use it before it will break or become inoperable. And because of that, we need to make sure that we start thinking about upgrading or replacing before we get to that end point. We don't want to be halfway through investigating a really big important case and have our hardware suddenly die on us because we thought, oh no, it'll get through this case, we'll be okay. We don't have to replace it. Always replace before you start anything really important. So if you think that something's coming to the end of the life, err on the side of caution and replace it before it gets too late. When planning your budget for your tools, consider the amount of time you expect the forensic workstation to be running. Okay, so how long are you wanting it to last for? How often are you going to use it? So is it going to be something that you're going to use every day, 12 hours a day? Or is it something that you're going to be using spasmodically for short periods of time? So that's an important thing. How often or how heavily is it going to be utilized? Think about the failure rate of all the components within the system. Okay, anything within your hardware. So if it's something like a write blocker, for example, then it's only a single piece of equipment. So you need to be aware of what the manufacturer states is the failure rate and keep that in mind whenever you're using it. If you build your own forensic workstation, as another example, you need to consider the failure rate of all of the components individually. Because some components, particularly those with moving parts like hard drives, for example, or optical drives, will potentially fail sooner than things like memory or CPU or graphic cards or those sorts of things. Even though, you know, your memory may become outdated, that is not enough, quicker than your hard drive wears out. But you've still got to be aware of the different failure rates of the components that you're looking at. Need to consider consultant and vendor fees. So how much are you paying for your hardware tools? So are they leased? Are they under some sort of maintenance contract? Do you need regular help with using them? Do you need regular maintenance on them? So not something you can do yourself. You've got to send them back to the manufacturer or the vendor to actually upgrade or repair or service. How much is that going to cost you in terms of to have the actual service or the repair done? But also, how much is it going to cost you in terms of that when that repair or service is being done on that tool, you don't have access to it. So how much is that going to cost you in terms of lost time? So that might be something. Have you got a backup for it? Have you got another tool that will do the same thing? Have you got another copy of that particular tool? All things that you need to think about, because if you don't have your tools available to you, you can't process your evidence. You can't proceed with the investigation, and that may be a really important thing in your particular environment. And then lastly, anticipate the equipment replacement. So how often do you think you're going to need to replace the equipment? Is it biannually? Is it every year? Is it every 6 years, 5 years? You know, what is it? And so you need to budget for that into the future. So at least keep a couple of budget cycles ahead, thinking about what you may need in the future. So you're not, you know, forearmed is forewarned. So research tools, useful to search for tools based on requirements. So if I just click on that for a second, and hopefully it will launch and we don't have a technology failure. No, we don't. Okay, so this is the tool I was talking about before, which gives you some insight into the different tools and techniques that are available. You can search based on tools and technique, which is number one. There's a page for developers to put information about tools and techniques. So if you're a developer, you can put some information about the whiz-bang new tool that you've made. And then there's a description of the functions and the technical parameters that each of the tool does it. You can see in a nice quick to reference table. So if we were to search for something, you can see, hopefully you can see that. I might just make that a weeny bit larger. You can see down the sides here, there are lots of different tools, forensic tools that you could potentially investigate, lots of different categories, bucket loads of categories. So if we just grab one, for instance, if we look at, where was one that I was going to look at? All right, so we look at forensic tool suites and we say find all tool suites that are Windows based. Okay, it gives us one of 14 tools that we can potentially look at. So there's Belkasoft, one by Belkasoft here, Belkasoft Evidence Center, there's Blacklight, there's Data Recovery System, there's DFAT Pro, DFS, so on and so forth, Forensic Explorer. Okay, so this allows you to identify what tools might be useful and then go off and investigate each of these individual tools, because some of these things, there's OS Forensics, we're going to look at that shortly. Sys internals, so there's a number of tools there that it gives you some brief information on and then some reference sites for you to go and have a bit of a look at. It gives you the release date, gives you the version number, so you can tell whether is it a new system that's come out, how many times has it been updated. So it gives you some basic information about it, for example. We could also look at something like disk imaging. Okay, so how many disk imaging platforms can we find, or tools that are based on Windows that will support SATA drives? They will write to SATA drives. They will look at whole drives and devices. They are a disk-to-disk copy, and they will do any format. Okay, let's leave it at that. That's getting a bit narrow because we might not find much there. There we go, we've got 6, one of 6. So you can see you can be quite granulated in your searching. You can be really specific in the sorts of things that you want for your tool, and this search engine will allow you to find it. Again, it will give you little bits and pieces of information about it, give you some idea. So this is last updated on April 4th, 2017. So why is that? Okay, so you then might want to click on it and see whether is it something that's no longer used, or is it simply not been updated. But there's lots of information about lots of different tools in lots of different categories on that particular site. So it's just useful tool for a quick and dirty, if you like, discovery of what's out there. It gives you some idea of what sort of tools are at your disposal. All right, in terms of forensic workstations, so this is basically building the tool, the hardware tool that you are going to, once you've copied the evidence, once you've acquired it, this is a tool, the hardware tool that you're going to use to process this evidence in using whatever other tools or whatever other procedures you're going to use. So you need to really carefully consider what you really need. So do you need a stationary workstation? Do you need something that's portable? Do you need a lightweight workstation? Do you need all 3 or a combination of those? Balance what you need and what your system can handle. Because remember that particularly memory and storage will need to be updated, and processing power will need to be updated as technology advances. So if, for example, you're in a law enforcement labs, you're probably going to need a number of options, probably going to need all of these with varying quantities of RAM and storage. So you might use several configurations, several hardware configurations, whether they're laptops, PCs, or servers. Okay. If you're a an individual forensic investigator or you're part of a security team at a enterprise organization, and you only do this sort of investigation fleetingly and rarely, then you may not need anything quite as heavy duty as that. You may get by with just a single stationary workstation, or perhaps a portable workstation that is a laptop. Important to keep a hardware library in addition to your software library. So what that means is different interfaces. So having the ability from hardware-wise to accept USB 1, 2, and 3, to accept SATA drives, parallel ATA drives, SCSI drives. Okay, all these different possible configurations. Okay, have the ability to be able to connect to different wireless systems. So 802.11a, B, C, so on and so forth. Okay, you need to have that hardware library to ensure that you don't get caught on the hop. So have a number of different, even coming down to different types of mice. You may need a serial mouse. God forbid, you might need a serial mouse or a PS2 mouse to be able to access a particular system, rather than a wireless optical mouse, for example. So all those sorts of things need to be considered. In private corporation labs, where you may only handle very specific system types within you only might have one type of platform, hardware platform within your environment, so one standard operating environment in terms of hardware and software, then you don't necessarily need to go the whole hog with these particular forensic workstations. You can be a little more cut down, a little more slimline. Building a forensic workstation, surprisingly, is not quite as difficult as it actually sounds, or you may think. The advantages of building your own is that you're able to customize it completely to your own needs, and potentially saving money on capacities or specific hardware devices that you don't actually need in your environment. So you can tailor it very specifically to your environment. The disadvantage is that it may be harder to find support if you have problems with your device, because it's not supported. If you build it yourself, it's not supported by one particular vendor. It may be more difficult to get the help that you need. And it can become expensive if there are careless processes or people involved and things break, or things get burnt out, or things get overused. In something that you buy from a particular vendor, you will have hopefully some sort of maintenance and support agreement in place, which will allow you to sidestep those sorts of issues if they were to happen. You do need to identify what you intend to analyze before you go about building your workstation. Okay, so what is it you are going to investigate? What is it you are going to be using in terms of the evidence? So what types of hardware are you potentially going to connect to, and what types of images or information are you expecting to get? Some vendors will offer workstations which are specifically designed for digital forensics, such as Digital Intelligence here. Now there's a link, one of the links on Moodle is it's also to these guys. That's not because I'm endorsing them and say you should go and buy them, but it'll give you an idea of the sorts of products that they sell, because it's basically a sales site, and I'm definitely 100% not endorsing their product or suggesting you buy it. I'm just saying it is an example of the sorts of forensic workstation you can get. Go and have a look at it, because it'll give you some thoughts about, you look at the different interfaces, the different features that they provide, and you can say, all right, well, I need that, but I don't need that. So then you can be more informed in terms of building your own workstation later on down the track. So look at a full-on example, and then that will give you some ideas on what you can potentially build yourself. Of course, if you've got vendor support, can save you time and money and frustration if you do have problems with it, but depends on how much money you want to outlay. You get what you pay for, and how much experience and frustration you're willing to bear if you run into problems down the track. If you build yourself though, you can of course mix and match components to ultimately get the capabilities you need for your forensic workstation. Some of these pre-made platforms might not necessarily give you exactly what you want at the price point you want. So building your own may actually make sense. In terms of some basic recommendations or what things you should consider when building your own forensic workstation. Determine where the data acquisitions will take place. So are you bringing seized evidence back to a laboratory, in which case you're going to need a stationary workstation, or are you needing to take your forensic workstation out on site? So do you need it to be portable? Really important thing to consider. Are you doing both and therefore need both kinds? With the newer FireWire and USB write blocking devices, you can acquire data easily using certain packages and a simple laptop computer. So you don't necessarily need to have a stationary workstation. You can just get by with a laptop or some portable device, regardless of whether you're going out in the field or you're bringing it back to your location. Some potential compact options for write blockers, hardware write blockers you can consider are these two here. So this is a WibeTech forensic drive dock there, and that's the Logicube Talon there. So if you want some more information on those, if you just do a quick Google search on either of those devices, you'll find the vendor sites and be able to drill down more on those.
Doesn't look like a cube.
No, it doesn't. It's poorly named, isn't it? Very poorly named. See, it's a logical cube, not a physical cube. So what that means, I have no idea. But bear with me. So, as with any technology, of course, what your forensic workstation includes or will look like, or the features that it has, is really up to you. What are your preferences? What do you need for your job? What are you comfortable with? What can you use? What can you understand? What's your skill set? Because whatever vendor you choose, you have to, whether you build it yourself or you buy it from a vendor, you have to make sure that the device will do what you want it to do in the way that you expect it to do it. If you can't use the tool, then it doesn't matter how whiz-bang it is, it's not going to be useful to you. If you're going to build a stationary or a lightweight workstation, consider the following points. So maybe you might want a full tower to allow for extra devices later on down the track as you need them. You might not know what you need at the moment, but if you've got the scalability there, you're at least got a little bit of protection in there. As much memory and processing power as you can possibly afford. You can never have too much memory. You can never have too much processing power. So buy as much as you can possibly afford. Different sizes and different types of hard drives. Okay, so because you're going to encounter different types and sizes of hard drives out in the field, you need different types and sizes of hard drives to potentially image them too, depending on how you're going to do your imaging. More power, the better as well. Power is another thing that you can't have enough of. 400 watt or better power supplies with some sort of UPS battery backup. You don't want your forensic workstation going down while it's performing some critical operations for you. A range of different, it says FireWire and USB ports there, but a range of different peripheral ports. There are a number of different ports available now, different standards of ports. The more you have access to, the better prepared you'll be when you get that unusual piece of hardware. Assortment of drive adapters and bridges. So that is devices, cables, interface cards that will allow you, if you need them, to be able to, or cradles, external USB activated cradles that you can connect different types of drives to if you need to, particularly if it's a portable, if it's a laptop type configuration, you're not going to have the ability to plug drives directly into it. So you need some sort of cradle or frame in which to place any drives that you may have. Ergonomic keyboard and mouse, that's just to stop you from getting repetitive strain injury. A good video card with a big monitor, preferably more monitors are better. So if you've got a laptop, you've got the monitor on the laptop itself, one or two extra other monitors as well, allows you just to spread things out, tools across your screen, and work on multiple things at the same time, and just keep everything ticking over, but everything's nice and clear. So you don't have to alt tab backwards and forwards between different tools. It can be all laid out nicely in front of you, and you can see everything that's going on. Because it's really important that you've got a really clear picture of what you're doing and where your operations are at as you're investigating. If you're having to toggle backwards and forwards between tools and screens, it can become a bit overwhelming. Now, there are times when you may need to do that if you're out in the field, but when you're in your own forensic environment, make it as pretty as you can for yourself, make it as easy as you can for yourself. If you have a limited budget, one option you can think of is to purchase some high-end game PCs. Okay, it might not have all the interfaces that you want, but in terms of memory and processing power and storage, which are, three really important things you can never have enough of, gaming PCs will often have that. So if you're on a really tight budget, often you can get a gaming PC that will suit most of your requirements and then add bits to it as you go along. Just an option to think about. Or, a gaming laptop, for example. All right, so last little stretch before we have a quick look at a demo, and I'm probably going to run a little bit over time, so apologies for that, but validation protocols. So I think this is an important thing to finish up on, because we've talked about tools, and we're going to have a look at a demo of a tool in a minute. It's important that you can always verify the operations that you carry out using any tool. Whether it's hardware or software, you need to be able to verify that the results you've got out the other side of it are what you expect and are a true reflection of the original evidence. You should use at least two tools to both retrieve and examine and to verify. So different tools providing the same answer. That's what you want. So you want that reliability. Different tools, two different tools provide the same answer, you know that you're okay. You need to understand how your forensic tools work. Okay, so this is what we're going back to before. This is really important in validation, that you understand implicitly how your tool works. Okay, you have to be an expert on the tools you're using, because otherwise you may infer that you're getting something that you're actually not. You may think you're getting an output and you're actually not getting that output. It's not really telling you what you think it is, because you don't understand how it works in the background. One particular way we can compare results and verify is by using a disk editor, for example, so such as a hex workshop or a WinHex tool, okay, to actually look at the original information there and validate. By looking at the original and the image that we've made, we can see clearly that they're exactly the same. Of course, we've also got our hashing that will do that, but this is an additional way, an additional tool. So we run our hash, likelihood of a hash being wrong, negligible, but if we use another tool to back it up, then we've got that example of that double reliability. Disk editors aren't very flashy, but they are reliable tools. They can access the raw data on a repository. So they might not look the best, might be ordinary you think that they're ordinary looking, but they're a really good validation tool to use, because they show exactly what's on the drive in an untainted form. The protocol that is potentially the best one to use, and again, it depends a little bit on your investigation and what suits you, but an example protocol you could use would be to perform your investigation with a GUI tool, nice and simple, allows you to collect lots of different data using the GUI suite, nicely organized, point and click, easy to use. Then verify your results with a disk editor. So not so easy to use, a little bit ugly, but it will back up what you've got from your Windows-based tool. Okay, so you've got that two different tools using two different methods coming up with the same results. In this case, we're comparing hash values obtained with both tools. If they're the same, great. So it's not just a matter of using the same hashing algorithm. You could potentially use same hashing tool. You need to use the same hashing algorithm. If you use a different algorithm, then it will come up with a different hash, but use different tools, same algorithm, you come up with a reliable way of validating what you're actually doing. In terms of upgrading your tools to make sure that the validation is always going to be right, okay, we need to test new releases. We need to do our OS patches and upgrades, keep things up to date. Okay, so then we know that we're using the best possible, most well-supported, verified platform underlying. If you do find a problem, report it to the vendor, and then don't use that forensic tool until the problem's been fixed. So if you're using a tool and you're finding you're getting mixed results, or something's not right, stop using it, use something else. And this is why we talk about using multiple tools, so that you don't get into that situation. If one becomes dysfunctional or stops working for whatever reason, it may be an upgrade that went wrong, it may be something faulty with the system, then at least you've got some way to fall back. You're not reliant specifically on that tool. If you're going to validate a hard drive image or hard drive, or evidence from a hard drive, use a test disk to validate. Okay, a sterile test disk to validate, and keep across new additions, updates, patches, validation tests for your tools as well. So testing the ability of your tools to provide an expected outcome. All right, so that's it for the slide. So let's have a quick look at a demo tool, which I think I've got open here. I have. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I'll just maximize that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you frightened the heck out of me then, Guy. Thank you very much.
Very, very sneaky.
Yes, it was indeed. So this is OS Forensics, and the reason we're looking at this, I'm looking at this, is because this is the one of the main tools that they use in the ITC 597 subject. There are other tools that other similar type tools, such as NCASE and some of those other ones we looked before at that Catalogue. But this is one we use at CSU in some of the subjects, and it's a all-in-one or a fairly comprehensive suite. As you can see down the left-hand side, there's lots of different options, lots of different things it can do. So the first thing you would need to do is create a case. I've already got one here that's already open, so I'll just load that one. Oh, it cannot locate. Well, that's because it's already loaded, you goose. I did that before. So from that, based on that case file, we can then, so we are now going to start, if you like, investigating a set of devices. Now, because I've got this installed on my own device, I've got a C drive. I've also got, okay, so that's the device in that. So I've got my D drive. So I've got a C drive, you can see here. I've got my C drive, a D drive, an E drive, and an F drive. So I'm going to grab the E drive and bring that into the case. And then from there, we can search for files. So this one is just a basic file name search. So there's not much on it. So we'll just do a quick search. You can search by any sort of string as you would in a normal command line using Windows Explorer. Shows us all the different files on that particular USB key in this particular example. We can click on them, we can open them, we can open the containing folder, we can view them with an internal viewer if one is so configured. If it's not, it'll just bring up some gibberish. We can show the file properties, for example. Okay, so we've got some creation, modified dates, the size on the disk, the short name, the attributes that are related to that particular file. So it gives you a whole heap of information about that specific file. Now that one hasn't got any metadata. Oh, I've upset it now because I've asked it to look in the text viewer. Oh no, I may have crashed the system. Good work, me. No, there we go. Going back to the text viewer, there it is there. So you can see with this one, that's, obviously, you would look at it in the text viewer and you'd say, okay, well, that's not going to give me anything useful, but it gives you that option. You can look at it in hex. Okay, so this provides the hex addresses on the actual, so that's the addresses and the information that is actually, so this column over here, the one on the far left, is the actual address on the USB key that this data actually exists at. And you can see here again, there's not really a whole lot of intelligent sort of output there. So you might say, okay, well, it doesn't give me much. You can look at it in ASCII format. Again, that really just populates that last column. Doesn't really tell us much. We can go back to this file viewer. It says, okay, it's unsupported. So from that particular, okay, there's not a lot we can do with that particular file. But that's because it's a signature file. If we were to look at, say, okay, let's look at this one. And we go to show file properties. Okay, we've got that. Metadata, no metadata. Oh, there is a bit of metadata. So what we've got the file name, where it is, the file size. Last time was monocode, the file permissions. Okay, see it. Okay, so it's initially a PowerPoint presentation that they've saved into a PDF. We've got Olivia Slattery as the author, the creation date. She created it using Microsoft PowerPoint in Office 365, and I Love PDF was a producer of the PDF file. If we go to the text viewer, we can see some interesting things. We know it's a PDF file because it starts with the percentage PDF, which all PDF files do. So we know that by looking at it, okay, it's definitely a PDF file. Because we may not actually, when we're looking at it on the disk, we may not actually want to open it. Because if we're not sure that it actually is a PDF file, it may be, you know, an executable that's disguised as a PDF file. It may produce some undesirable results. So opening it this way allows us to look at it and say, well, it's got the percentage PDF attribute at the start of the file. We know it's a PDF file. We can now open it with a PDF viewer, and we're not going to have any unexpected operations occur. As we scroll down further, we can see, okay, well, it's a load of gibberish, so there's lots of graphics, but we can't get anything valuable out of that. But we do know now for certain that it's a PDF file, so we can open it with PDF viewer. We could also do the same thing with the hex viewer. Again, you can see at the start, percentage PDF, so we know it's a PDF file. We can click on the file viewer, and then it gives us the text only. In this case, it's giving us the text only of the file. It's not showing us the graphical components of it. So again, that might be important. It might be important to be able to look at the text and the graphic separately. Okay, and then from that, now that you know it's a PDF viewer, you may want to say, all right, let's just open it. And it's open on my other screen, of course. And then that's what the actual file looks like.
And now you all know just how wonderfully fit Matt is.
I didn't say it had anything to do with me, but that was you saying that. Yeah, so that then shows you the contents of the actual PDF. But you might not want to do that, as I said, until you look at it and know that it actually is a PDF file. So that's the importance of being able to use these tools to actually investigate what the file is before you open it, so you know what you're actually getting. If we look at another example, so say this one here, let's look at this one. Okay, we've got some file properties there, it's good. So we know we've got our attributes, blah, 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 we've got that. Any metadata, there's a little bit of metadata, not really much, telling us much more above what the file info does. We look at the text viewer. There we go. Okay, so it's a whole heap of text. Okay, so we know that it is a text file. Again, it's not something masquerading as a text file. It is a text file. We can look at the hex again. Again, it's not really going to show us any more other than the addresses. File viewer, in this case, it's unsupported, but we know already now by looking at the text viewer that it is in fact a text file. So then we could say, all right, let's open that in our default viewer. And there we go. So we've got a text file. So it just allows you, this particular subset of the tool just allows you to get a feel for what you're looking at before you go and do it. All right, deleted file search. Let's have a quick look at this one. So let's see if there's anything on that particular drive that we're looking at that has been deleted. No files found. Isn't that always a way? All right, let's have a look at this other one I've got here. Is there anything on that? There's nothing on that. All right. Technology at its best. Let's pick something else up here, which I know has some deleted files on it. Let's look at this one. This may take a little while. All right, so we've got, have we got any, oh, we haven't, let me see, are they included? Excellent or good. All right, let's look at all files because I want to see the ones that are not so good. Right, so what we're saying here is, if you remember from one of the previous evenings, we spoke about that files can be deleted off disks and that they're not actually deleted, they're just marked for deletion, and those clusters, if you like, where those files exist are then allowed to be overwritten again. Now, these green ones, these ones here that are green, are files that are, in this case, it's 84, or this one's a better one. This one's 99% retrievable, because even though it's been marked as deleted, 99% of the clusters that are associated with that file have not been reused. So I've got a very good chance of being able to save that deleted file, okay, to bring that back. I'm not even sure, it's just a recycle bin file. All right, let's, if we look at this one, okay, this is an ISO image. It's a little bit hard to see, unfortunately I can't blow it up for you, but basically it's an ISO image, so it's 4.1 gig in size and it's 69% still available. So if I look at the file location information, again, I apologize if it's a little bit small. I can't do a hell of a lot about it, unfortunately. What we can see from down here is the dark green is the, and let me just turn on, no, I can't do that with that. These dark green areas are the unallocated disk clusters. The brown areas are the allocated disk clusters, and in this very slim light green here, or iridescent green, we can see they are file clusters that are unallocated. So what we're seeing is that these clusters, the majority of these clusters, so the dark green ones, are still unallocated. So that means that that file is still largely intact. You can see parts of it are not. The brown part, dark green parts are still relatively intact. So we might have a good chance of getting that back. So if we compare that to this particular, I don't even know what this file is, but if we look at this particular one here, we can see there's a little more light green in that one, but again, a lot of that file is still available to do. If we scroll down and we look at one of these, 0. So okay, so what this means in red is that it's got 0% of that file. So there's no, I can't save that file. So if I try to say that, it just says to me the quality, the restore quality for this file is estimated to be bad. Part of the content of this file has been overwritten by newer files. Remnants of the file might be available, but the file will surely be incomplete. So, and when you've got a 0 there, it's basically telling me there's absolutely no point in trying to recreate that file because there's nothing there. Whereas something like this one, if I were to do that, save deleted file, it will say, all right, I'll have a go at deleting it. Where would you like me to put it? And then you can select a location and click OK, and it will then restore the file. Then you can examine it using your other regular forensic tools.
That's cool. Hey, Matt, with the brown and the green scales, they both sort of had the brown to the left and the green to the right. Does that represent any particular part of the file? Like, would it be looking at the file from the top to the bottom sort of thing?
Yeah, so look at from start to finish, correct. From starting cluster to end cluster, correct. So let's just go through a couple of other quick ones, because I'm bear in mind we're going over time as usual, which is unusual for me.
Oh, but it's bloody good content though. People stick it around.
So we've got a memory viewer, in which case we can actually have a look at what's actually in. So again, this is a live, potentially a live acquisition, because OS Forensics, you can actually install it on a thumb drive and plug it into a device that you might be investigating and run this in a separate logical space, if you like, so that you don't have those issues with overriding evidence. Like a software write blocker. So you can, that's not telling, no, that's not telling me much for this particular device. So it's giving our address range, the size, whether it's free or committed. So you'll see what's interesting, or might be interesting to you, is that you've got different blocks of memory that are, all these are contiguous blocks of memory. So they're all one after the other, and yet they have different levels of committed, reserved, and free memory space which within each of the memory blocks. So again, memory is allocated a little bit like hard drive space. You know, a little bit of memory is allocated, but it's allocated in the set cluster size. So you then end up with these area holes in memory, if you like, so a little bit of that slack space within memory as well. So that's interesting. You can, I'm not sure whether this will work, but we'll see, because I haven't got that much over. If I go select window, and I select, for instance, the Q&A window. Okay, so there we go. That's shown up as Zoom. So it gives us some process. So what I was basically looking at there was a question and answer box. That was the window I selected. So it tells us the memory space in which it lives. It gives us the memory layout of that particular process. Okay. And it gives us the process information. So that's all specifically to do with that little Zoom window. Now, if I was to, let's pick another window. Just bear with me for a sec while I get this out of the way, and we'll pick this window. So we select that window. Now see that we can now see that process is the Chrome process. Memory space, there's the information about the particular memory that Chrome has access to. There's a memory layout for Chrome. So, okay, so it's got the reserved memory. So this is looking at all my memory space, and this is showing us the particular spot in memory in which Chrome is currently sitting. Okay, so it's all very on the fly. What can I do now without doing anything dangerous? If we look at the next one, so raw disk viewer, and we look at, let's look at this one here. Okay, so that's a USB key I was looking at before. So that gives us a raw, basically a raw output of the entire contents of that particular USB key. So we can see that we start off, so it's been formatted using MS-DOS 5, and it's a FAT32 device. And then as we look down through it, we can see there's a whole heap of clusters that are not allocated. Okay, there's some more non-allocated, and then we start getting here. There's some messages there, and if we keep scrolling down long enough, because this will actually go on for quite some time. And this is only, I think this one's only like a 16 gig or something USB key. So you can imagine, so you can see these, you might not be able to see that, but that's labeled as a sector. So each one of these, that much there, is each of the sectors on the disk. So that's sector 41, 42, 43. And if we scroll down until we find, okay, now we're finding something useful. So this is sector 805,845. So you can imagine how many sectors are going to be on a multi-terabit hard drive. Again, it's going to depend on the sector size, the cluster size, which is determined by your operating system. So now we can start to see that there's data in this area of the thumb drive. And as we scroll down, we can see, yes, we can see the memory address, so the sector address in this left-hand column, and then these two columns are the hex content, and then this is the ASCII content in this last column here. So we can scroll down, and this is often what you do with WinHex and these sorts of tools. You just scroll through memory until you can find something that makes sense. There will be various patterns in here that will indicate different file types. So you might see something with a a percent PDF potentially, or you may actually come across a text file, in which case you'll actually see the text over in this far right-hand column. But as we're just scrolling down, as I said, there's hundreds of thousands of sectors on, and then we get, okay, we got to the end, we've got a bit of a blank block there. So you can scroll through, so you can see that if even on a small drive like this, it is really a painstaking process to go through the raw output. And that's why it's really important to have tools that can do it for you.
Yeah, so they would automate that.
Yeah, largely automate that. Yep. So they would draw your attention to specific things.
So, Don, that might answer your question that was just said in the use case for examining memory space. If a tool could automate it, you'd be looking for specific things. No doubt you could program that in or input whatever the thing you wanted to look for and
yes,
recover the thing you're after from this.
Yes. Well, even with this one, so you can put a search string in there if you wanted to. You can click search and you can search via hex or text and actually put whatever it is that you're potentially looking in there. If you're looking for a specific string or a specific set of characters that you know indicate something, then you can do that, and you can do that with the memory as well. You can also bookmark a specific spot. So if you found something, you can go, okay, I'm going to bookmark that, come back to it later. You can do that. And you can also potentially decode it. So the decodes are really just giving you information about the physical and logical sector. That's the most important part for this particular spot of the disk. The rest of it is generic information, but you can decode the exact physical and logical sector that you're looking at if you're not quite sure about it. And you can also jump to a specific sector if you want to, if you know somewhere you want to hit to, or you're looking and you're saying, all right, well, there's nothing here. Let's go to the next partition, for example, or the next sector, or the next logical cluster number, for example. So good question. All right. So the registry viewer, again, this is another tool that's just in this suite. We can click on, obviously you can't, you're only going to get the registry from the main hard drive of the operating system. So in this case, the operating system's on C drive. So then this will give me all the different registry hives that I can look at. And I can open one of them if I wanted to. Probably take a little bit of time to open that one. I probably should have opened a smaller one. No, it's not too bad. And then we can drill down into that. Okay, so that's no different to using regedit 32 or plain old regedit to look at your registry. And then from that, so you would use this to, for example, look for evidence of virtual machines, for example, or malware or some sort of software that is either trying to hide itself or has been installed and then been removed by someone because they don't want you to know that they've had it. But the registry will usually have some sort of scraps of evidence left over. Again, it is a painstaking process to go through, but you've got your search capabilities there as well. So you can find a specific string. If you know there's a specific string that's going to be repeated, you can find it once and then go find next. So it's basically the same functionality as regedit 32, exactly the same. You can export registry keys or values to text, so that's your evidence file, or you can also add it directly to the case as well, the case file as well, in which case OS Forensics will keep track of it for you itself. File system browser, so that's really not that much different from what we were looking at before in terms of so if we add a device case, in this case E, so we can add a drive that you've got, we can mount an image. So we can mount in forensics mode or standard mode. So forensic mode just means that it'll look a little deeper. You get access to attributes and hidden stuff that you don't in standard mode. You can look at a physical disk, look at a specific partition on a physical disk. You can look at an image file, a network path, or you can look at a shadow copy as well, which is relevant to Windows. So if we look at, we add E drive to the case, which is a USB key we've been looking at. It's taking its time there. Hopefully I haven't, oh, look out. Oh, there we go. That killed me.
No.
Technology at its best. It's all right, I'll just bring it back. Okay, let's just bring it across again. So there you go. Always does it. So file system browser. Let's have a look. See, we'll give it another chance. I don't know. Let's look at D maybe. Oh no, okay, okay. It's not. You've got to add it to the case. All right. Ah, that's why I didn't, because I hadn't added. All right. Okay. All right. So anyway, file system browser gives you the same output as your file name. So once you've done your file name search, a file system browser is basically a similar output to this and gives you the ability to right click, look at the attributes, open things with an internal viewer, determine what they are, and then open them in a normal viewer as well. Web browser is kind of boring in that it literally gives you just a web browser to go out on. Because remember, if you're using this as a standalone tool on a thumb drive, you might want access to the web, but you don't want to access the web using the tool you're investigating, the device you're investigating. Otherwise, you might change cache cookies, those sorts of things. So it gives you a standalone web browser as well. And they shamelessly advertise their own product. Passwords, I'm not going to do this because this is on my own machine, but you can browse the passwords that are available on the device or any of the applications that are open on the device at the time. So say Chrome or any of the web browsers or any other application that's got some sort of password associated with it. You can live acquire the passwords from the machine you're currently trying to investigate, or you can scan a end device for any passwords that exist on that. You can also look specifically at Windows passwords using both live acquisition and scanning. We can generate a thing called a rainbow table, which is basically a file that you use in conjunction with password cracking. Hence, retrieve password with the rainbow table you just generated. We can also look at decrypted files and password recovery files as well. We can look at system information, which is really just giving us knowledge of the different commands and different operations that are available on the command line. So live acquisition again, or we can scan the drives for looking at everything. We can, oh, I can't edit with a free version, what a shame. And we can't execute with the free version as well. We can also verify, create our hashes. So we can grab a file. So let's just quickly do that. Let's grab a file, say, here, so E, forensic files. Let's just grab, let's look at this one here, looking at before. We're going to use the hash function, SHA-1, I guess, is as good as any. And we calculate that hash. And there we go, there's our calculated hash value. All right, so if we had another copy of that file, we could do a compare. Actually, let's do something like that to give you an idea. So have we got a text file there? We haven't, but we do have. All right, that's what we do have. So let's do this just as an example. Sorry, I know I'm going a bit over, but I think this you might find this interesting because it demonstrates how a hash actually works. So if we were to open this particular CSV file, and I can drag that across, all right, we can see that this is the contents of the CSV file. So that's just information about the files that are actually on this USB key that I created earlier. Okay, so we've got that particular file open. So FF, well, it should be file, but it's FLE list. So I've done a bit of a typo there. So let's just minimize that and let's calculate a hash for that particular file. So that's that one there. We calculate the hash. So there's our calculated hash. I'm going to copy that because I think we can just, yep, we can do that. So I've just copied that hash that I've made for that file. I now go and let's change one character. Let's add a space in there and we save it. We're minimizing it. So all we've done is added a space. We haven't done anything else. Okay, we've got the same file. Let's calculate that file. Okay, let's copy in the old hash. They don't match. Okay, so you can see, and what I've been banging on about at different times is that it only has to, all I added was that one single space. So in terms of looking at the file, it doesn't look any different whatsoever, but we now know that the file is different because it has generated a different hash value. So we know straight away that the integrity of that file has been compromised. So that's really valuable in terms of when you're creating your images or you're copying your evidence. If you get a difference in the hash, before and after hash, you know something has gone wrong. Even if the file looks identical, something is different. Or it may be that, you know, someone has scroll down a heap of cells and they've put some other information in there. And then they've saved it, you know, and I mean, that's not that far down, but it might be thousands of rows down and you're not looking for it. And then again, so we take that current value and we calculate the new hash. You can see that the data hash size changes. We add it in, again, it's changed because every time it's updated, the hash value changes. So that's a really useful way of being able to look at it. We can also do a volume. Okay, so if we look at, say, let's look at F because it's only a small one, and we calculate, I don't know how long is this going to take or will it actually work. So it looks, yep, there we go. So it's creating hashes, creating a hash for this particular volume. Okay, so I won't let that go on because it'll take forever, but it basically allows you to do the volume as well, or you can just do some text as well, different types, UTF-8 or UTF-16-bit text. Okay, so it gives you a few options. Hash sets basically you can use different, so these are for your web browsers, or you can import different hash algorithms or sets to be able to use to verify your different files. You can create signatures for your drives or files or evidence that you've downloaded, and then you can save that, and then you can compare it to the signature of the image that you create to make sure it's so. Again, it's another way of verifying. Okay, so it's not the same as a hash, similar but not the same. It's a different tool allowing you to verify the same thing twice. We can then prepare a drive. So drive preparation is, and I'm not going to do this, but basically, I could do that one, I suppose. This basically allows you to sanitize a drive. Okay, so we are preparing it to accept evidence, to accept an image. So we're sanitizing it, overriding it to stop anything from that's already on the drive from tainting the evidence that we're putting across onto it. We can do our drive imaging. So we can create an image, select the drive, select the target, off you go. Have to, of course, ensure that the target is larger than the source, otherwise things are going to break. We can restore images. We can look at the hidden areas, and we can do a rebuild of a RAID image file. So a RAID image file, so say for instance, you've got a mirrored RAID file, so RAID 1, you've got a mirrored image, you want to rebuild it, you can do that. So that allows you to create your images. You can then mount your image. So once you've created it, you can then, so you've created your image copy, as many as you like, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can actually mount them and have them appear as a connected drive. Okay. Forensic copy. So this is about copying from source to destination directory. So if I wanted to say take all the contents of that drive and I want to take them forensically across to F, so that is making sure nothing is changed, software write blocked, nothing changed, integrity is done. Of course, I would have done my hashing beforehand to have my original hash values. I then go start, and then copy all my files over. So it's copying everything over for me. I would then rerun the hashes on the destination, compare the two, and if they're the same, goody gumdrops, everything is fine. So it's going to take a little bit of while. Incidentally, you can actually click onto other tools and use other tools at the same time. You'll just notice it's got a good bit of green light there. So you can actually do multiple things at one time too. So it's good hence going back to that advantage multitasking. Okay, so that's now created that image. So if I was to look at the two drives, so E, forensic files, and if we look at F, forensic files, okay, all the files are there. Now, whether they're exactly the same, I would have to, as I said, I would have had to run the hashes before and after, but the purpose of the forensic copy is to make sure that that does happen. Lastly, last tool on the link is just to let's install it on a USB or optical drive. So in this case, we're going to install it on my E drive. We can also, remember we spoke about Windows Forensic Environment. We spoke about that a couple of topics ago. We can actually launch that, and as we install OS Forensics onto our USB key, we can make it a bootable solution. So we've got our all-in-one tool installed on a USB key. Then if we want to pay them lots of money, we can register it with a key. We can find out a little bit about our version of OS Forensics, so we can make sure, because we have to keep it up to date. And then last but not least, when we've finished our case management or demonstration, we hit the exit key and we go back to our presentation. So there you go, that's it. That's a bit of a demonstration on one of those case management tools. Of course, so we have gone quite a bit over time, and I do apologise for those of you who are on a time limit, although it looks like we've managed to keep most of the co-ed on board, which is great. But that is one of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different tools that you could potentially use for your forensic investigations. That, of course, brings us to the end of our forensic course. There is an activity this week, which is visiting one of these sites to try out some of the activities. So play with some of the topics and some of the thoughts and some of the tools that we've spoken about in a safe environment. So don't put them on a production system and use it, but put them in a safe environment and just fiddle and enjoy using these tools. Get some practice on them, build up your expertise, build up your own skill set, so that if you ever do need to do this sort of thing, then you're well informed and you're ready to go. The only other thing, before we open up for questions, the only other thing I want to mention is that the exam for this particular online course will be probably open now. I think we've opened it at 9 o'clock, so it's already well and truly open. You have to do all 4 previous quizzes, one for each module, before you get access to it. There are 40 questions in the set for the exam. You must obtain 50%, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Guy, but I think that's right.
Yep,
50%,
that's right.
Yep, 50% pass. They are not all multiple choice questions. Okay, so we're giving you a little bit more of an interesting exam. So there are plenty of multiple choice questions, but there are also drag and drop. So where you'll be provided with an image of something, and you'll have to drag and drop certain terms or certain things onto that image. There will be fill in the blanks. There'll be select answers from drop-down list boxes. There'll be some WXYZ questions, which are questions that provide you with 4 statements, and you have to determine which of those statements is correct, and then you select the answer in a multiple choice fashion. So there are multiple choice question on steroids, if you like, so a bit more pumped up and require you to think a bit more in depth. There's also some short answer questions, but none of them are particularly onerous, so long as you've followed along with all the content that we've provided you. I will say that most of the questions are drawn from the slide decks and the activities that are specifically on Moodle for you. There are a couple that are from the wider readings, so just keep an eye out for those. You have 1 hour to do the exam. Well, actually, you can take as long as you like to do it, but if you take more than an hour, it won't be graded properly. So therefore, you won't get the pass and won't get your certificate. So I think that's all for the exam. If there's anything else you want to add, Guy, fine. Otherwise, I'm happy for us to look at some questions if there are any.
Yeah, I'd just add that For those that have done a few of our exams before, this one will be more difficult just by its design, which I'm very grateful for. I think it's a wonderful initiative you've gone through, Matt. Would have taken a lot more time to get done right, so I think it's lovely. So yeah, you only get one shot at it. That's the big thing. So I'd be amazed if anyone was ready to go straight away. You're going to need to revise a bit. It's there's no due date, there's no last date you can do it by, but I would also recommend not waiting too long lest all of the information sort of seep out. Give it a crack in the next couple of weeks. We'll be emailing you sort of to remind you and sort of keep you posted about when the course certificate is available too, because we tend to wait a little while just to get enough data to make sure all of the questions are behaving as we anticipated before grading them formally. But yeah, have fun with it. Give us a bunch of feedback too as to whether you prefer the what we think is a more interesting model of exam. It'll help guide what we do in the future. Other than that, let's get to the questions. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Yep, so Dominic, yes, you can take the exam at a later date. Yeah, just take your time, work through it at your own pace. You know, we know you've got other commitments, but don't wait too long lest you sort of forget what we were talking about in Module 1. All right, so people have a bunch of questions about the tool that you were just demonstrating, Matt. Just, I guess, briefly, can you go over like where we can find it? You know, I guess its reputation broadly. That'll take us through a few of the questions at least.
Yep. Okay. So it can be found at www.osforensics.com. So you can get obviously you can get the free version, and as part of it hanging over on my screen there. So let me just change that so I can drag it across. Yep. So if we go, no, not that one, you silly personage. About. So this is where you can get it from, osforensics.com, the free version. The paid version, I think, is in the order of around about 800 US, something like that. As for its reputation, than both of those platforms or some of the other more commercial grade ones. I wouldn't recommend this one as being or as useful for law enforcement type applications as maybe something like an NCASE. It's not probably quite as supported for that. But in terms of smaller scale investigations or corporate investigations, and yeah, this is no problem at all. Very useful.
Steve's wondering whether anything can be deciphered from the hash value. And I might just say, Hannah, can you please stop any further questions from coming and just delete them? Sorry, folks, otherwise we'll run forever, no doubt. Can anything be deciphered from the hash value, or is it just a tracking tool?
No, just a tracking tool. So all it really does, it's a one-way mathematical algorithm that spits out that value, and there is no possible way that you can go find what the original text is or what the original file is from that hash. So it's more or less a mathematical label that is unique to that file only. So you can't reverse engineer it.
Thank you. Another one from Steve, actually. Even though the tool says it is read and 0% from that list of files and seeing which ones you could save, the file is incomplete. Can you still retrieve whatever part of the file that might still not have been overwritten? We saw that you could.
Yep.
What sort of investigations would you do that for? Is it I guess it depends on budget as well.
Well, it does. I mean, you could do that for potentially any investigation. It just depends on how valuable you think that file may be for your investigation, for building your case, or for building a narrative of what actually happened. The likely, if it's at 0, once they get into red, it starts to, you don't get a lot out of it. You might get the odd snippet. So it might be useful for corroborating other evidence that you may have, but as a piece of standalone evidence on its own, it would unlikely to be useful. If it's in the red, yellow might be a little bit useful. And if it's green and you can get most of it back, then obviously you're on a winner.
If you're anything like me, you'd probably draw false inferences from
Well,
limited.
and that's true. And that's what I'm saying. You need to be able to corroborate it with something else because it might actually not give you the full story.
Couple of questions from Hamilton Dwight Walker. Short course regular, always love hearing from you. Wondering about, I guess, protecting their own, I guess, existing hardware. Is it wise to use a VM to do forensics to stop destroying hard drive, or would you use, or would you attach extra drives to do the forensics?
A VM is a decent approach. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. If you're going to use a VM, probably use a type 1 rather than a type 2. So that is a VM platform that doesn't require underlying operating system. I mean, that's the purpose of having a dedicated forensic workstation, so that you can actually use that to do your investigation on. In terms of the connecting to a actual device that you're trying to get evidence from, then what you might want to do is actually build something like this, install the USB, use the Windows forensic environment builder and create bootable, so then you can boot off that. But of course, you've then got to offset, okay, do I need to, if I'm going to have to reboot it, then I'm not going to be able to do that live acquisition. So you've got to balance that up with what you need for the particular case.
That would probably answer Andre's question, because yes, there are cloud-based digital forensics tools. It's just a question of, you know, whether it's right for the case, right for you,
Yeah.
right for the budget, right for your objectives and skill set.
Correct.
Can that memory viewer we were looking at earlier also access GPU memory? From Nicholas.
I don't think this one can, no.
There you go.
No, OS Forensics can't look at GPU memory, no.
Have to dig through one of the tens of thousands of other tools, Nicholas.
Yeah, certainly Encase can. As I said, though, this is you know, a lot less expensive than Encase, but yeah, no, that's a limitation. Yep, that's a fair point. It's one.
Yep, and Neil, no doubt, would be the same. Neil Howell has asked whether there's a tool to detect data inside of images if someone is hiding content and messages.
Oh yeah, lots. So that's steganography. So if you were to visit that NIST site I was showing you before, that allows you to do the research on the forensic tools, there is a whole section in that where you can find tools related to steganography.
Yeah, that looks like a really good list.
Oh, there are bucket loads of tools. And in fact, if that's one of the things that we do look at in a lot more depth. So if we, where is it? Steg analysis. So that there will give you a listing of the tools. So that one, that's just for Windows. So there's only a couple in there. Gee, that's a bit ordinary. There's certainly a lot more than that for Windows. So that's obviously not up to date. What have we got? One of 4. Yeah, well, okay, there's not too many there. But in answer, these are probably commercial ones. There is lots of tools that enable you to, look inside images. And as I was saying, the other forensic subject we offer through IT Masters 513 Forensic Investigations, we actually do some steg analysis.
Alfred, couple of questions here. The demo, if the demo is part of the exam, I'm going to face the music since my audio failed. Don't worry, you can check the recording. And yeah,
no, the demo is not part of the exam.
No, but for anyone that's missed any of the content, just make sure you have another look at the recordings, which are all available on the course page, and go through the activities and maybe most of the readings as well if you really want to excel in the exam.
Correct. Sounds like excellent advice.
If only I followed it. Can open source tools give the same output as commercial ones? Since most of the times you find out that you reach somewhere and they say you need commercial tools, or they give a report that is not complete. Build a toolkit.
Yes, but you need to build, that's right, you need to build a toolkit. Yep, you need to build a toolkit. And look, there's some things that the commercial forensic tools, there's probably some things that they can't provide that open source tools provide, or open source tools will provide quicker and easier. So, but commercial tools are not the be all and end all. And remember, most of the commercial tools are specifically aimed at law enforcement type investigations rather than corporate investigations, and you might find that they're just not right for your particular environment. So in most cases that I can think of from a private investigation context, open source tools would be more than equal to commercial tools.
Good news. Let's go to the top of the questions and we'll work our way down. An anonymous attendee asked very early on whether we have to maintain a chain of custody for all copies of the data or just from the primary to test you're presenting.
No, all copies of the data. Yep, because if for instance, you've got you look at the initial copy of the data and you mess it up and you have to go to a backup, if you haven't maintained chain of custody from that, it automatically makes it, the integrity of it or the value of the evidence less. So it has to be for all.
Yes, one wouldn't want to be embarrassed
Nope.
in proving their evidence or testing their evidence. Victor asks, how much skill do we need to do digital forensics with these tools, standards and qualifications? Master of none level for Victor. And I guess it's an interesting question. Would it be a role that people could do as part of a, or a function that people could do as part of a role within an organization? Or do you think people tend to specialize in this generally?
Oh no, it's definitely, well, definitely both. Definitely do both. There's no reason why you couldn't do it as a function of an organization. If you're talking about taking on as a specialization, like for instance, in a law enforcement sort of capacity, then you would need significant skills and significant experience, but that is not something that you would necessarily, you're not going to walk into that. You'd have to be a law enforcement official for a start, then apply for that role, and then you would work your way up. So the training will be provided all the way up. If you're talking about from a private point of view, so you're just say a security analyst or a member of a security team that does a bit of this investigation for corporate things, then you really, it's important that you stay within your lane, so to speak. So stay within your skill set. And the only way to build that skill set up is either someone more learned help you out, or by experimenting yourself in a safe environment. There's no substitute for that experience. So yes, you could go off and get qualification. There's a number of forensic related type qualifications you can get, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the hands-on practice with the tools and you don't have the practice with the analyzing the evidence and try and build a story from the evidence, then you're not going to be successful.
Thank you. Phil wonders whether, considering Windows is the most common platform in commercial entities, what is the better of the known OS tools to assist to gain sufficient outcome with Windows?
There's lots.
Lots.
Yeah, there's. I'm not going to sit here hand on heart and say this is the one that you must absolutely positively use. As I've said before, throughout various times in the course, the tool that you're going to use is the one that you're comfortable with, and provides you with output that you think is relatively reliable given your context. So there's nothing that I would say I would recommend one tool over another. I think that it's going to be dependent on the case, your experiences, and the resources that you have at your disposal.
Thank you. Melina was actually, when we were talking about end of life of hardware, I think perfect example of end of life is actually in one of the articles that was posted on the course page. So she sent a link to that, which was really nice. So thanks, Melina. I'll just answer that question live so people can see where we answered. And also, Melina found a few links that didn't seem to be
Yeah,
working.
they're a bit dead on that particular article. Yeah, I noticed that. So
Yeah.
obviously they're a bit out of date, that one.
But, yep. So anything that doesn't seem to be working, just email short courses. We'll check it out, and chances are it's just doesn't necessarily. Not everything will work perfectly, but there'll be lots of good information in there anyway. Thanks, Melina. Luke's wondering about law enforcement quality digital forensic lab. I assume that there'd be pretty significant hardware costs associated with that. And is there any sort of forensic lab quality accreditation?
Yeah, there is. So there's in Australia, well, there's a couple of different ones, but the main one is NATA accreditation. And off the top of my head, it's National Authority. I can't remember what NATA stands for. I suppose I can look it up in the background here.
I'm sure someone will chuck it in the chat.
But yeah, NATA accreditation is main accreditation for forensic labs. And they do accreditation actually. What is in NATA? National Association of Testing Authorities, that's right. So they do accreditation for all sorts of labs, including things like concrete testing facilities, or so if you're wanting to put a dirty great big building up on a site, they will go and test the site, the soil and the foundation of the site to see whether it's up to scratch to put a multi-story building on it. They'll do accreditation for labs like that, for any sort of biochemical, biology, physiology type lab. They'll do accreditation for those, and also for digital forensic labs as well. So law enforcement agencies have to do NATA accreditation. So that's at least, and that's in Australia. Whether that's other countries, I'm not quite sure. And that they lay out the requirements for the lab. Don't talk about the type of hardware you have to have or the capacity of it. That's going to be determined by what your objectives are. But in terms of how the lab is to be set out, in terms of the rules and procedures that have to be used within that lab, that's all very strictly set out through that accreditation process.
Thank you. Steve asks whether hard drives that contain images of source hard drives need to be retained after completion of cases and stored long term, or whether they can be reused for other cases.
Depending on the case and really the order of the court and requirements of the actual case itself. But in most cases, they will need to be, kept for some time until things like avenue of appeal and all that sort of thing are completely exhausted, if that were to happen, for example. But otherwise, there may be other circumstances. If you've got multiple, as long as you've got at least one full copy of it, you're pretty safe. So the other copies that you may have made, they can be reused for other cases, forensically wiped, sterile, and then they can be used for other cases. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Cam asks whether using a hardware write blocker would using a hardware write blocker technically limit the possibility of corruption on connected hard drives if a power outage were to occur without a battery backup?
Yes.
Good.
Is a simple answer. Yeah.
Thanks, Cam. Any specific OS with built-in tools like Kali Linux for vulnerability and penetration testing or security assessment? Is that a question?
Yeah.
Go with the NIST list.
Maybe. Oh, no, I see what I mean. There is a number. Yeah, no, there are a number of Linux distributions which are specifically built with tools in them for, so Kali Linux, you've just mentioned that. I have actually got that here somewhere, but I haven't got it fired up on the VM. It'll take forever. But yes, it's got forensic tool built in, but there are specific builds of Ubuntu, and some other FreeBSD also variants that are forensic images, so you can run them up as a VM, your forensic workstation in one. Keep in mind that you need to be able to use Linux command line based tools. There's not too many GUI tools in that. In the Linux environment, you'll tend to have more command line tools than GUI tools. The Windows environment will be the other way around. But yes, there are a number of specific Linux variants, builds that have all those tools built in.
Thank you. D. Ahmed asks, can we extract the data from the storage if it's encrypted, but the key is not available using the OS forensics tool that you demonstrated?
No.
More
That's an
tools
easy
out
one.
there, though. I don't quite understand this one from Sebastian. Do you have the solutions for the digital corpora scenarios?
they're the scenarios I put up on Moodle for people to try out. No, I don't have them, but they are available off that website.
Okay, beauty. And this was an interesting one from Pasquale. It's essentially process versus people question. Pasquale thinks it's essential to have tools that find a lot of information by default. Otherwise, there's a risk that using the same tool, everything that is discovered is the result only of the skill of the person carrying out the investigation. The more sophisticated the tools are, the less you risk not being able to find important evidence. I used to work in insurance, and there was a bloke called Darren who used to say, oh, I don't like all of these fancy dancy tools that do all of the thinking for the brokers. His responsibility was to train. He's like, he was very much no, you have to develop your talents and skills, and the tools are just a bonus. I suspect maybe, well, I know Brenton, another mentor that we work a lot with in these short courses, is all about process and sort of says, the people are too variable and you can't sort of rely on them being there all the time. They might fall under a bus or they might go into other things. Do you have a particular position, Matt?
I agree with the assertion that you need to have tools that find as much information as possible. But having said that, the human ingenuity is the thing that's going to turn that information into something useful. So it may be that you've got, you can have a tool that will tell you every single thing about a particular file or an image, but unless you have the skills to interpret that intelligently and understand what it's telling you, then you're not going to be anywhere anyway. There is no tool available that will interpret it fully for you and build a story or a narrative. So that's where we as humans and our ingenuity and skill and experiences can be used to piece the bits and pieces of evidence together. The other thing I'd say is that even if you have tools that create lots of output, there's no guarantee that the person that's looking at that output will even know it's important anyway. So at the end of the day, there is no, I agree to a certain extent that you need tools that provide you with a lot of information. But the most important thing is, your own experiences and following, known processes and procedures of sifting through the evidence to come up with a story and a narrative that is as close to the best possible representation of the truth that you can get to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's a good way to finish off. Thanks so much for answering all of those questions and answering all of those questions every week and hanging around much later than we necessarily paid you for. And thanks everyone for hanging around every week to listen along and adding such, really great questions, and so many of them. It's been a really nice time. Thanks, Hannah, for, looking after us and making sure these short courses actually happen. Always a pleasure. I guess I'll leave it up to you, Matt, to finish off, and thank you as ever. It's been a lovely 4 weeks hanging around and talking nonsense with you.
Yeah, it has been enjoyable, and thank you to you, Guy, for your outstanding job as MC. You're always a great fun to work with and provide a lot of insight in the background about what students and people who join these courses are sort of after, and really help to guide my narrative of where I go with things. So I appreciate your assistance as always. Thanks, Hannah, as well, for being that silent assassin in the background. We don't hear from you, but we know you're beavering away there in the background diligently as ever. And lastly, thank you to all of you students out there who have signed up for the course. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And please feel free to come back and revisit any of the IT Master short courses at some stage in the future, and keep a lookout for the new ones as they come up. We're always offering something different to whet your appetite and maybe engage you in some tertiary education. So thanks again for your attendance and for being so patient with these long tutorials. And I hope to catch up with you maybe in a metaphorical sense some stage in the future.